Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Melissa Clarke, and welcome to Excuse Me, Doctor, the show that is here to empower each of you with the information that you need to make decisions about your health, the health of your family, and the health of our community. It's so important now more than ever before to use evidence and facts and science to make those decisions, to know that the information you're getting is trusted information and not information that is misinformation or disinformation or speculation or I heard it over here kind of information. So that's why we're here each and every week. And I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to my listeners, the first time listeners. I call everyone part of my Be Health Empowered family because that's what we're here to be health empowered. For those joining on Facebook, thank you so much. Please remember to hit follow. For those joining on YouTube, thank you so much. And please remember to hit that red button, subscribe, so that you can continue to stay informed and get updates as we have them. Now, our show tonight is one that I think has probably been very anticipated. It's called Fall into Health. And the inspiration for this is the fact that we know that with this pandemic, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, these diseases are ones that COVID-19 preys on. They're ones that are called the pre-existing conditions that people who come in touch with COVID-19 are more likely to get severe infections and maybe end up in the hospital and maybe end up dead, unfortunately. And so tonight we're going to talk about those steps that you can take immediately to start improving your health if you have one of those pre-existing conditions or even if you don't. We have a wonderful panel who's going to help us talk about all of that. And so we're going to move to that section of the show, but so much happens every week that it's important for me to be able to bring you each week the weekly recap where we go over all the news that's happened in health that I really think I've curated it and tied it up and put it in a little bow for you, hopefully so that if you missed it during the week, you're able to listen in to what I have to share and you can get the most important takeaways from what's happened this week. So let's move into our weekly recap. So let's start off with the numbers. Unfortunately, we have sailed past 7 million COVID-19 confirmed cases in the United States. And as I always say, we know that's an undercount because not everybody has been tested. So that's why we always say confirmed cases. And unfortunately, the death toll from COVID-19 is now over 200,000. We're almost at 205,000 deaths from COVID-19. We know now that Indigenous people, Hispanic people, and African Americans are now dying at rates almost 3.5 times that of white people. And almost 100,000 white people have died of COVID-19. I don't think that the media emphasizes that enough, and that's why I'm highlighting it tonight. Because I think it gives a mistaken impression that white people are not dying of COVID-19, and that's not true. It's just that people of color are dying disproportionately. We've talked about the many reasons why that is, one of those being a higher rate of pre-existing health conditions. But when I see the protests around not wearing masks, when I see Sturgis, and when I see this new motorcycle rally that's happening in Missouri, I often wonder, well, do white people think that because the news media emphasizes people of color dying disproportionately, that means that they are not affected? So that's why I thought it was important to highlight that over 100,000 white people have died of COVID-19. This is a disease that affects everybody. This is a disease where we have to protect each other because we are all in this together. We either get all better together or we all continue to suffer through this as we have been. And the key to that is recognizing everyone's vulnerability and everyone's responsibility to protect each other. And the good news is that over 4 million people have recovered. Who's in that group of people who've recovered? Well, it's important to remember that a lot of people never even get diagnosed. But the highest mortality is among people who are over 80. But even with that, their mortality is 15%. So those are, of the people who are diagnosed with COVID who are over 80, 15% die. That means that over 85% survive. And as you get younger and younger in the age groups, that survival rate increases. So again, I think a lot of people don't realize that. We do know that there are long haulers in that group, people who are going to have symptoms for many months. So it's still the best policy to not get infected at all. The next part of our recap is that the CDC is compromised. I said it, the CDC is compromised. We've seen any number of flip-flops from them over the past few weeks. They came out with a controversial statement earlier saying that it's not necessary to test people who don't have symptoms of COVID-19, where we know that that's not the case. The more testing we do and the more cases of people without symptoms that we find, the better, because we can then tell those people to stay out of circulation, stay away from people who are vulnerable, isolate themselves, because that is the key to stopping the spread of the virus. So they came out recently and changed that and updated it to say, yes, we do indeed need testing. But then there was another misstep today where they said that people who, that the spread of the virus actually is through small microparticles, micro droplets. Well, they came out and said, yes, that was the case. They came out and said that last week, but then today they walked it back and took it down off their website. And then even their guidance around reopening of schools was not very robust. And that happened earlier this year. It's really important to recognize that the CDC is the preeminent public health institution in this country, and actually some might even say in the world. But because of the waffling and the going back and forth, I say double check everything with what the WHO says. If you're not sure, talk to your doctor. And you can always come here to Excuse Me Doctor, look at past episodes, join us each week, because that's why I'm here. I carefully gather all the evidence that I can and I present it to you as best as I know what is accurate and what represents the consensus of most scientists and the WHO. So the next recap that I want to touch on is the vaccine will not likely be here by Election Day. So we've heard the White House occupant talk about the fact that, yes, definitely we're going to have a vaccine by Election Day. Well, the truth of the matter is the three leading vaccine companies that are doing their trials right now were forced to sort of make their protocols public. And in the interest of being transparent, I wouldn't even say they were forced, but yeah, public pressure led to them deciding to make their protocols transparent to try to help reassure the public that the vaccine trials are above board. And in doing so, it came out that they really don't even plan on reviewing their data until November. Well, the election is November 3rd. If they're not even reviewing the data till November, then they're not going to be applying to the FDA for approval of the vaccine until after that. So it would be impossible that a vaccine would be available by Election Day. So I wanted to put that out there because, and then even if it is available, let's argument's sake by Election Day, which again, highly unlikely, it still needs to be distributed. And even the plans for distribution are delayed. States have to get it. They have to submit what their plan is for distribution, and then they actually have to execute it and carry it out. And it's estimated that the vaccine won't be widely distributed until mid next year, best case scenario, probably later in the year. And they're accepting recommendations now about who should get the vaccines first. I think it's widely accepted that healthcare workers should get the vaccine first, and then other groups, it'll be decided probably people with pre-existing conditions would be the next people to prioritize. And then the other piece that I really think that I have to talk about, it's not COVID related, but in a way it kind of is. And that's that forced hysterectomies have been happening in ICE detention centers. They've seen one in particular in Georgia where 17 women who are immigrants are alleging that they had their uteruses removed surgically when it was not medically necessary. Now, we know in this country we're no strangers to forced sterilization. This happened to African Americans and primarily, but other groups who were disabled or had cognitive disabilities. It happened a lot to African Americans in North Carolina ever since the 1930s up until 1972. Some of those women got restitution, but it happened. Once your uterus is taken out, you can't have any more children. And I want to specifically call out and salute the whistleblower, who's an African American nurse, Dawn Wooten, who had the courage to recognize what was going on, to listen and hear what the immigrants were complaining about, this doctor being the quote unquote uterus collector, and go on the record such that now we're looking possibly at congressional hearings being held about this very topic. And so I want to say, for just your regular woman who goes to the doctor, if a hysterectomy is recommended, it never hurts to get a second opinion. The indirect indications for hysterectomy, of course, are if you have cancer, if you have uncontrolled bleeding, where medications are not stopping it, or any other less invasive procedure, and of course, if you have large fibroids that can't be resolved by a less invasive surgical procedure, then hysterectomy is indicated. But if you don't have one of those indications, it's probably good to get a second opinion and just understand what all your options are short of hysterectomy. And that's especially true if you're of childbearing age. And then our next area to recap this week has to do with alcohol and COVID-19. Now, I know that we've all seen the memes, right? I'm putting a bottle of tequila in each room and I'm going on a pub crawl. Or wine is the glue holding me together in 2020, right? They're funny, and we know that the liquor stores have been booming during COVID-19. But it's important to realize that an occasional drink in the evening is fine. But if you come to the point where you feel that you have to have it to unwind, or if you have to have it to cope with stress and anxiety, those are warning signs that you could be headed towards dependency or even addiction to alcohol. We know that alcoholism goes up in times of stress. We know it went up post-Katrina. We know it went up 9/11. And so just imagine the kind of stresses that we're under right now, just not from COVID-19, but from police brutality, from videos constantly on social media showing yet another Black person being brutalized by the police, election anxieties, protests, natural disasters happening. All this is going on and all rolled up into one. And so I know the temptation is definitely there to try to rely on something outside of yourself to try to give you comfort and peace, especially alcohol. But there's several reasons why, other than addiction, alcohol is not a good idea right now. First of all, it lowers your inhibitions when you're around other people and you should be socially distancing and wearing your mask. Those things kind of go out of the window when you're drinking. The other thing is alcohol lowers your immunity. It contributes to weight gain, and it can also worsen depression. It might seem like it actually is giving you a boost in your spirits, but it actually next day leads to fatigue and depression, which makes you think that you need more, and it can lead to a vicious cycle. So if you see any of these things happening, talk to your doctor. Reach out to a counselor. I've posted on my website, on my Facebook page, links to where you can find mental health counseling. So please visit those. Taraji P. Henson's foundation, called the Boris Henson Foundation, named after her father, offers 5 free counseling sessions to anybody who reaches out. So please don't hesitate to do that. So that's our weekly recap. And I want to now do our weekly segment called the Weekly Debunk, where we take misinformation and we stop it in its tracks. So this week's Weekly Debunk: you know we can achieve that herd mentality if we can just let the virus spread throughout the population. Well, the White House occupant misspoke and said that the virus would go away over its own time due to herd mentality. He actually meant herd immunity. So what is herd immunity? Well, it's when enough people get the virus and develop immunity naturally, so that the spread of the virus effectively ends. Now, people look at Sweden and claim, oh, Sweden is doing herd mentality, but their public health herd immunity, see, even got me slipping up, herd immunity, but their public health people say, no, that's not what they're trying to do. They actually have been recommending to their population, not mandating, the same measures that the rest of the world and the WHO has recommended. And of note, their population is a lot more homogeneous than the United States. They don't have this thing about individual liberties being the most important thing and arguing against, wearing a mask for that reason. They also have universal health care. But they have experienced more deaths, higher deaths per capita than all the rest of their European neighbors. And they've taken a hit to their economy. So they have not come out ahead by avoiding mandating certain public health measures to stem the coronavirus. Herd immunity is when 60 to 70% of the population becomes immune to the virus. In order to achieve that in the United States, that means millions of people would have to be infected, and it would result in over 2 million deaths in the United States. We're not going to do that. No one is advocating for that. No one is accepting it. I don't know where the White House occupant thinks that can fit in any kind of reasonable public health policy. And we all know what we need to do. We all know that we need to mask. We know we need to physically distance. We need to avoid crowded spaces and wash our hands. So herd immunity is not happening until we get a vaccine. So that is our weekly debunk. And now I want to move into our show, which our panelists are waiting. And I just want to introduce this segment by saying that, I had a conversation on a popular radio morning show with the host who was concerned about his recent diagnosis of diabetes and wanted to know, well, am I going to have to take medicine the rest of my life? And I said, no, absolutely not. Curable is not really the word to use, but reversible is the word to use when it comes to type 2 diabetes. Just to be clear, type 1 diabetes is when your body doesn't make insulin, so you need insulin. Type 2 diabetes, which a lot of us acquire as we get older, but even teenagers have it, is reversible and does not require medicine to treat it if you are able to focus on the lifestyle behaviors that can lead to better health. In my book, Excuse Me, Doctor, I talk about those 5 self-health actions: drinking enough water, nutrition, movement, sleep, and finding effective ways to manage stress on a daily basis in your life. So today, I have a wonderful panel lined up for you. And the first person I'd like to introduce from that panel is Mr. James Tate, who's both a health minister, and a certified integrative nutrition health coach and nutrition therapist who helps people reach their wellness goals. He owns Beyond Weight Loss Total Wellness Center, LLC, which is a Christ-centered holistic wellness center. Welcome, Mr. James Tate. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And our next guest is Mr. Sherman Nelson Jr. He's an associate pastor, fitness coach, master instructor, and national team coach of Taekwondo. He's also an author and a speaker. And I wanted to welcome you too. Mr. Sherman Nelson
Thank
Jr.
you. Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Absolutely. We are happy to have you. And last but definitely not least, we have Miss Amber Harmon, who's a sought after professional support vocalist who sung with greats like Mesa Leak and Regina Bell. But she is here tonight to talk about her health journey and significant weight loss as a keto coach. So thank you so much for joining us,
Thank you for having me,
Ms.
Dr.
Harmon.
Clarke.
Absolutely. And I should also mention, too, that James Tate is an author as well. So that's really important to mention. And we're going to get into that with him. So our first question is going to go to James. So I'd like if you could start off by telling us, how did you get into nutrition? And why have you decided to focus that on that as your purpose?
Well, that's a great question. And just a little bit of background about myself. I was an overweight child, teen, and overweight adult. And I was involved in an accident in 2007 that damaged the entire left side of my body. I was immobile for a year and had 3 years of physical therapy. And in 2010, I went back to church, rededicated my life to Christ that New Year's 2010. And at that time, my weight was 415 pounds. And my doctor told me my injuries will never heal if I do not lose weight. But I've been big my entire life, so I did not think it was possible. And so I started to study every scripture about nutrition. I started to eat that way. I started to pray and fast. And at the end of that year, my weight went from 415 to 205 naturally. And the thing is that I was still doing physical therapy, so I couldn't work out. And so that really showed me that it was the nutrition that was very, very important. And so I started to study more about nutrition. I went to nutrition school and received my first certification in nutrition. And nutrition is key. And that's really what I teach my clients. And when I go to public speaking events, I always talk about nutrition.
Wonderful. Well, they say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, right? So that first step sounds like it was incredible, the one that you took. What do you advise your clients in terms of just getting started?
Well, one of the things that I use a lot of analogies and I try to paint pictures with words for my clients. And I want them to realize their value. A lot of people don't realize their value. And when you're in possession of something valuable, you tend to take care of it a little more. And people don't realize that the body is a multi-million-dollar machine. And for many of us, it's going to be the most expensive thing that we possess in our entire life. And I always say, if you drove $1 million car, what type of fuel would you put in it? And I can ask pretty much anybody that's viewing this right now, did you put premium fuel in your high performance vehicle today? And if you put that low grade fuel in a high performance vehicle, it's not going to perform the way it was designed to perform. So that's when I encourage the nutrition. We have to eat real food so that this body will not break down.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great segue to move to Amber, because Amber, you really talk about that premium fuel. Tell us about your journey and how you ended up becoming a keto coach.
Thank you. First of all, just like Mr. Tate James, I tried everything to lose weight. I tried Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem. There were so many things that I had tried and failed at. And I had a couple of friends who were successful with keto, and I immediately just did my research. I just like to look things up first before I start anything. And I saw a lot of the health benefits of eliminating sugar out of your diet. And I just decided to give it a try back in March of last year. Cold turkey. I just cut out sugar, and it was a complete challenge. But I got it. I got it. Finally, I got it under control. And because a lot of people don't really understand how addictive sugar really is, and how sugar is in everything that we eat, even things that aren't sweet.
Right.
It's inside of it. So I just decided that I really wanted to take control of my weight, but also to take control of my health. And when I did research, I saw how eliminating sugar out of your diet It lessens your chances of acquiring cancer and diabetes. And so I really just wanted to make a change. So I just decided to give it a try, and it's been
Right.
awesome. I've lost about almost 70 pounds.
Wow. And that's tough. Especially as a woman, and we're gonna get to that part, but I want to bring Sherman into the conversation because we've touched on nutrition. Sherman, can you share with us your journey? And you are a personal trainer. You focus on physical fitness. Tell us the role that physical fitness plays in this whole mix in terms of weight loss and achieving better health. I
I go last because the physical fitness part is secondary to good nutrition. And like James said, you can have a finely tuned $1 million automobile, um, but if you don't put the right fuel in, it will never perform. My job is to make sure that the tires turn and the struts and the suspension all move in harmony with what you want to do. And so I encourage my clients to keep it simple. We have overcomplicated fitness and healthy living because it's an industry, and we are talking billions of dollars spent every year on equipment and gadgets, on cardio equipment. I bet all of us know somebody who has a treadmill in the basement, or a bike in the basement, or an elliptical in some expensive piece of equipment, when your body is the only piece of equipment you really need. Everything else, that's the cake. Every other piece of equipment is just icing. And so I try to get my people to keep it very, very simple, and let's move our bodies through space, because ultimately the goal is to live life easier and better. And when we live easier and better, that just means that we move our bodies through space and we don't have to work as hard. When you can go to the grocery store and pick up your own bags of groceries and come home and bring them in the house yourself. You don't have to stop and lean on the car. You don't have to take a break. You don't have to leave them outside and come back and get them later. That's the quality of life that I'm trying to help people achieve.
Wow, I think that's an excellent point. Especially the buying of the equipment. Gyms have been closed during COVID-19, and I think that it's still debatable as to whether they're safe. To resume, even though some places have resumed. As winter comes up and people have fewer options to exercise outdoors, what are you recommending?
Well, I worked at a commercial gym. I won't say the name. It rhymes with mold. Um, and molds was designed to keep you as a customer forever. And most commercial gyms don't want you to get fitter or stronger or healthier. They want you to be customers. So moving out of that space, I am firmly convinced that if you have 10 square feet in your house, you can get all the work you need. If you have 10 square feet, if you have a chair, and you have a mind that is malleable and fluid enough that it can embrace just moving your body through space, you can get it done. We are not required to go to gyms. We are not required to lift 400 pounds and 500 pounds to get stronger. Bodybuilders need that. Athletes may need that. But the average person just needs to be able to push themselves off the ground. Can they squat down and pick something? Can they step up on something? And those three simple movements are all you really need.
Wow. Is there such a thing as over exercising?
Absolutely. You can overdo everything. Everything should be done decently and in order and in moderation. There are people who I need to train 4 hours a day, and I need to do it 7 days a week. And all you're doing is wearing your body out. Your body's not, it doesn't need to work that. Your body, like James said, it's an incredible machine. It is highly adaptive, and it makes very quick adjustments to the stressors in your life. So the need to have to do that much work, it speaks to an issue that we're not addressing. There's another psychological issue that we're not addressing. I had people come into the gym at 5 in the morning and they're there till 9. And there is literally no person in the world needs to work out for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. There's just, but if you don't want to be what the alternative is to being in the gym, then that's something else in your life you want to try to address. And exercise won't fix that.
Yeah. So you bring up the psychological aspect. I want to move back to James to talk about, stress. I mentioned, managing stress in our lives every day. Certainly, and I talked about alcohol too. Certainly, stress is one thing that leads to overeating. What are some of the things that you talk to your clients about in terms of helping them recognize stress eating and strategies to avoid that?
Yeah, so dealing with holistic wellness, stress is a major part of it. Stress actually causes all of the organs in your body not to function properly. And when you put your body in a state of dis-ease, it opens you up to diseases. And so when it comes to stress, we always tell people if you want to lose the physical fat, you have to lose the mental and emotional fats first. And so what I try to help people to do is get to the root cause of what you're stressing about and why you're anxious. And you'll see that people are drawn to certain foods. Certain foods have certain chemicals or ingredients in them that draw you to them. But you really have to identify the reason why you're stressing, and that's one of the great reasons as being a health minister. Why I can use the word of God with that, because he says that. So be anxious for nothing, but through prayer and supplication, make all your requests be made known to God. Or which of you can add a year to your life by worrying? So I try to help people to get that worrying under control and get the stress and the anxiety under control, because it's going to push you to the bad foods. And when you put those bad foods into your body's already breaking down because of the stress, and those foods are going to make it much worse.
Absolutely. And
Amen.
I love the fact that you bring in the issues of, having strategies to deal with the stress. Having prayer, meditation are very key ways to do that. Exercise itself helps us to also lower those
Hmm.
stress hormones in our body, as one strategy. Even hobbies. I know you're a vocalist, and music. Certainly, listening to music, dancing to music, all kinds of music also help to lower those stress hormones in our body. Now, I want to get back to Amber because I know that you focused on keto. You said that you tried a lot of other diets. Um, Maybe can you talk with us about how is it that you've been able to stick with keto even during this pandemic when other people have certainly gained the COVID-19, no pun intended, the 19 being a pals.
Right.
But yet you've continued to lose. How have you done that?
Um, I I always tell people like get everything out of your house that you know that you're not supposed to have. When it's accessible to you, then you know like where it is and where you can go get it. I try my very, very best to keep all of the things that I know that I'm not supposed to have out of my house completely. Now, when you're out, and I sometimes I say this to some of the clients that I have that I coach. It's different when you're going out and you have something or if you indulge than when you're out. But when it's there with you every single day, and you're able to like see it every day, walk past it every day, you know that it's accessible to you, then you'll have it every day. So I would just advise to get everything out of your sight, out of your house, that you know that you're not supposed to have, and just replace those things with the things that you're supposed to.
Wonderful advice. And James, a lot of our listeners may have questions as women uh, who might be in that age group of 45 to 60, you know, going through hormonal changes in their lives. And there's a lot of literature around how hormonal changes can make it more difficult to lose weight. Can you speak to that and what maybe some of the nutritional techniques and strategies are that you advise to those individuals who are concerned about that?
Yeah, so the thing is that health looks different on every single person. And I always tell people, once again, as being a health minister, it allows me to use the word of God in my practice. And I know everyone does not want to hear it. Everyone may not accept it. But for those that do, I will say that ask God what it is that you should do. I mean, there are a lot of dietitians, there are a lot of nutritionists, and there are a lot of specialists that will give you all types of information. But you would not take a Bentley to a Ford dealership and ask them to fix it. They may be able to change the oil, they may be able to rotate the tires, but I'm sure that you will feel more comfortable taking that particular vehicle to the people that made it. And it's the same way with God. And I know that there's probably some people rolling their eyes right now, but I'm just speaking from experience. Once you ask him what it is that's best for you, he's going to answer you and tell you what it is that you should eat, what it is that you should stay away from. Now, it's up to you to stay away from those foods and to eat the things that he tells you to do. But the thing is, it just looks different on everybody. And that's my word of advice, is to go to him and ask him what's the best thing to do.
Amber, would you like to maybe add to that as well?
Sure. I'm right along with James as well. And just like he said, after you ask God, what it is that you need to do, and He gives you what you need to do, of course, you need to stick with it. And I know for me, a lot of times, especially like, being at home with COVID-19, even on keto or low carb, you can still get that COVID-19 by just being at home and eating all day. But I know one thing that I've realized is that a lot of times when I think I'm hungry, I'm not really hungry. I'm just bored or I just want a snack, but I'm not, my body is not really wanting to eat food. I just want something else. Or I just might be thirsty. A lot of times when we think we're hungry, we're actually thirsty. So drink water first, see how you feel, and then go ahead and have something to eat.
Absolutely. And then, what do you also, Sherman, mention to your clients about, again, those women who are age, say, 45 to 65, who might be having problems because of hormonal issues?
Yeah, the interesting thing is listening to Amber and James. It's like they're saying all the things, and I feel like I'm just a copycat because I want to come behind them and say the exact same things that they say. I promise you, I say to clients weekly, you're not hungry, you're bored, so or you're thirsty. I say to them, you know what, you have to get to the root cause of why these foods are triggering you. The same thing with exercise. When you say I can't really walk, I mean I can't really exercise, I don't want to lift weights, I don't want to look like a man. If you're not taking hormone injections, you won't look like a man. But what you can do is get up and walk. And we can walk around the block and walk briskly. And almost everyone has a smart watch or some kind of smart device. And then measure yourself and make incremental progress. You did not get out of shape in 2 days. You're not going to get in shape in 2 days. It was a lifestyle change. What we want to do is make exercise such an integral part of your lifestyle that it's just like everything else. We don't, at this point, we're not cognizant of brushing our teeth. We just wake up, we take a shower, we know we have to go brush our teeth. I want you to think of moving your body through space the same way. I wake up, I get up, I get dressed, I go for a walk. I walk around the block 2 times, and you know what? Last week I went and I went at this pace. This week I'm going to go at a little faster pace and start there. It's the journey of 1,000 steps, like you said, Dr. Clarke. It starts with that first step, and I promise you, momentum. The laws of physics say an object in motion tends to remain in motion unless acted on by a greater force. And so
Right.
let's get moving, and we'll stay moving. And there are forces working contrary, but we can overcome those forces because greater is. I'm sorry, James. I almost went to the. I'm not gonna do. I said I'm not gonna do it. I'm trying to not do it, but it's hard.
So, so I just want to remind the audience to get your questions in now because we're going to be getting to them very shortly. And I also wanted to add too, again, I think stress is so important. The stress hormone cortisol, it does throw off all our other hormones.
Yep.
And all our hormones are related, whether it's estrogen or testosterone in men, estrogen in women. Leptin is a hormone that increases appetite. So when cortisol is thrown off because of stress, all those other things go into disarray. What I hear you saying, each of you saying, is number one, by if you focus on God, and that is your way of managing stress and knowing that there is a greater power than you, that is an important way of managing stress. If you exercise, that's an important way of managing stress. If you do yoga and Tai Chi or Taekwondo and meditation, if you do underwater basket weaving, whatever your method of managing stress in your life, that is really important. And the most important thing to do is to do it on a daily basis, because we get
Correct.
stressed on a daily basis, right? So as everyone's typing in their questions, I wanted to go back to James for a moment to ask about, there are a lot of diets to choose from, as Amber mentioned before. She ended up doing keto, but there's the Mediterranean, there's intermittent fasting, there's South Beach, there's cabbage soup, there's just a ton of them. Where do you where do you start with your clients in terms of helping them to narrow down what might work for best for them?
Well, one of the things that I tell them first and foremost is that every time that you eat or drink something, you're either feeding disease or you're fighting it. And I want them to look at their organs as employees. I'm pretty sure that everyone has had or has a job. And if you work your job, you want to be paid for it. And if you work overtime, you want your time and a half or your double time. Well, guess what? Your organs never take a second off. So how do you pay them? Do not force your organs to become disgruntled employees and quit on you because you're not paying them with good food and clean water. So I always tell people to
Wow.
drink a very colorful, have your plate as colorful as possible. Lots of colorful fruits, colorful vegetables, and fiber, fiber, fiber. We have to eat fiber. We do not eat enough fiber. And fiber can actually cut down a lot of the chronic illnesses that we suffer from today. So we have to get fiber into our bodies. If it doesn't have fiber, don't eat it. And that's what I try to teach my clients, that you have to eat foods with fiber. It's very important.
Yeah. And some people may have heard the term prebiotic and probiotic. Fiber is a great prebiotic. What is a prebiotic? It helps to give the good bacteria, the healthy bacteria in your system, something to feed on. Because
Hmm.
probiotics are putting the bacteria in your system, but if you don't give them something to sustain themselves, they're not going to be able to help your body like they normally do. And one of the major ways they help your body is helping to build your immunity, which I'm sure everybody's concerned about right now. So yeah, fiber, fiber, fiber all the way. And then I'm curious. What are some of the challenges that you had early on, Amber, in starting keto, and how did you overcome them?
Um, just like I said before, people don't realize like how addictive sugar is and how sugar is in a lot of the things that we eat, even if it's not sweet. But one of the things that I kind of overcame first, and I know it may be silly to say, but it really, really is mind over matter. And I had to really, you know, coach myself every day and say, hey, you know where you want to be and you know what you have to do to get to where you want to be. And if that means like not having this soda, I can live with that. I would rather not drink soda than to have diabetes or to have cancer. And not to say that one soda will give you that, but I know for me, I was drinking soda, juice. It was too much. So just
Yeah.
really doing that mind over matter and telling yourself, look, is this where you want to be? Then you got to do what it takes to get there.
Yeah. So a lot of people, they end up having some kind of major health crisis, right? And that's
Hmm.
what makes them decide, hey, I'm gonna do better. For those people who have not had the major health crisis yet, what words of wisdom would you give them to get them started? Especially now as we're going into fall. Tomorrow's the first day of fall. It's a chance to start over. Maybe the summer didn't pan out like you wanted to. What are some words of wisdom that you could give to people to say, to help them get motivated and help them get inspired? And I'll make that an open question to anyone.
Well, I guess I'll start.
Yeah.
I would just tell people to just love yourself. That's one of the most important things, and just know that good health is much more than just eating right and exercise. You have to be healthy mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and just love yourself. Love on yourself every single day. Self love. Do something today that your body's going to thank you for tomorrow. And if you have that mindset, then you're going to build off of it every single day. So just show yourself some love every single day, whether you're eating right, exercising, drinking water, giving your body the rest that it needs, doing something good for somebody else. Just show yourself some love in one way or another every single day.
Yeah, the banner on my Facebook page, on my Dr. Melissa Clarke page, is love yourself. Yeah, that's really the key, the motivation to being empowered. Anything to add to that, Sherman? And maybe while you're adding to that, you can also tell us about your book.
No, I should have gone first. I never should have let James go first because I knew he was going to say all of that. No, it is difficult. We're called to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And part of the reason why most people can't love other people is because they don't really love or like themselves. And I want people, I try to get my clients to understand how valuable and rare they really are. So we have this misperception that diamonds are rare and they charge an awful lot of money for diamonds, but diamonds really are far more common than we realize, but they were marketed that way. But an individual, like there's only one James Tate in the entire world. There are 7 billion of us. There may be someone else with that name, but there's nobody else with that body. So you are a designer original, and you've got to treat yourself like that. We value paintings and ceramics and other things that can be replicated, but we can't replicate ourselves. And so because of that, we ought to treat ourselves like the high value commodity that we are. And if that requires eating a cookie is great. A package of cookies is a problem. So it isn't that you can't ever have, just like Amber said, a soda won't send you off the edge. But if you know you have an addictive personality, and I'm glad you talk about sugar because we've all been addicted to sugar. Once we got off our mother's breast milk, everything we've had since then has had sugar. So I have 50 plus years of sugar addiction. So it's difficult to kick that. But when I recognize how valuable I am, I say, do I want to be an addict? Do I want to be like Pookie in New Jack City? Because that's really what we are to sugar. We don't want to see ourselves that way. And yes, I did write a book. I've actually written 2 books. And the first book I wrote is Flowing from My Heart, Letters from a Father to a Son. And it's 8 letters to my unborn son about things I think a man should teach a boy. And I grew up in a home and my parents weren't together. And so there was a void. And it took a lot of pain and a lot of hurt. And eventually God healed my heart and my relationship with my dad. My dad is my favorite guy in the entire world. But I wrote these letters to my son about these things that are important, just like nutrition and taking care of himself and treating himself the way that God would treat him. So I think it's really important to recognize how valuable God went through extreme measures to have you and to redeem you and to keep you and to love you and fortify you. Then we got to just if nothing else, do it. Treat ourselves like he treats us, and that would be good enough.
Wow, that's wonderful. You mentioned a word, void, and a lot of people don't realize the voids that are in their lives, and they use food to fill it, to try to give them some sweetness in life, which is where I think our sugar addiction comes from.
Excuse me, doctor. Excuse me, doctor. We have a question from Monica West. Monica West says, clearly she is not praying the right prayers. Is there matrix for age, gender, and caloric intake.
James, you want to take that?
Yes. So for age, gender, and caloric intake, there's actually so for age and gender, yes, there are different caloric intakes. There are different fat intakes, cholesterol, sodium, as well as fiber. But one of the ways to do away with a lot of the numbers is to eat the foods without labels. In order to fit into those numbers, you actually have to read the labels of the foods in the cartons and in the boxes and in the containers. But if you eat foods without labels, the fruits, the vegetables, the nuts, and the seeds, you really don't have to pay attention to those numbers as much. So if you go into the grocery store, majority of the grocery stores are all laid out the same way. When you walk into the grocery store, you're going to be met with fruits and vegetables. You're going to be met with the foods without the labels. We just put our head down, bypass it, and go right to the aisles. I always tell people, and it may sound a little harsh, but always remember this: life is on the perimeter and death is in the aisles. If you shop primarily on the perimeter of the grocery store, you're going to be okay. So make sure you eat lots of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. And those fruits and vegetables are full of fiber, like I mentioned earlier, which is what your body needs.
Excuse me, doctor, we have another question. This question comes from Michelle Walker Scales. Can you discuss how to deal with the inflammation in the body? It too, in addition to stress, can cause many illnesses and disease.
Yeah, so I see James shaking his head, so I'll give you that one too.
Yes, so inflammation. So with inflammation, another one of the things that helps with inflammation is fiber. Also, you have some herbs and spices that help with inflammation. One is turmeric. Turmeric is a natural anti-inflammatory, and turmeric actually works better if you mix it with capsaicin. So that means any type of spice. So black pepper. If you combine turmeric with black pepper, that's going to boost the anti-inflammatory properties. So that helps with that. Also, pay attention to your stools. I know a lot of people, when you go to the restroom, you don't like to look down, but look down, because sometimes your stools will let you know if you have inflammation in your body as well by the shape and the color of your stool. So pay attention to that, but make sure that you eat whole foods and incorporate turmeric with some type of capsaicin in your daily regimen.
I also just want to add to that that actually nutrition is one of the primary ways to address inflammation. And I would also add to that ginger. Ginger is a great anti-inflammatory as well. I often drink ginger turmeric tea. But the other four self-health actions all help to address chronic inflammation in our body. That's getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. That's drinking at least 2 liters of water a day if you don't have kidney disease. That's moving and exercising, because movement actually, when your muscles contract, it releases a certain chemical in your body called scalaxin that's an anti-inflammatory. And then, of course, the managing stress is a huge source of inflammation, and managing your stress and getting it under control every day. All those 5 self-health actions are key to decreasing inflammation, but nutrition's huge.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So maybe, James, you could tell us about your book.
Yes, so I am the author of a children's book. So my children's book is titled The Cool Kids and the Land of the Giants. And it's a book about a group of Christian friends that take on health-related giants that have invaded their land. So this is a series, and in this first book of the series, they take on a giant named obesity. So it's teaching children as well as their families how to fight and defeat obesity with biblical principles. And in this book, I have the 8 steps to better health, which are pray, eat right, pray, drink water, pray, exercise, pray, and rest, which is actually sounds similar to yours, Dr. Clarke.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yep.
You follow those, and then your health will definitely increase.
Wow. And I love the graphic on your shirt too, because I think
Oh,
that's part of
thank
the
you.
book, right? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So, Amber, maybe you can tell us what is, did you incorporate exercise into any of your journey? And also too, I had talked about facing a major health crisis. Maybe you can also tell us about that in your life as well.
Absolutely. So about 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and my gastroenterologist um, basically told me that there's no cure for it. Either just goes into remission, or you have to take medication for the rest of your life. And now I don't have any type of family history of it at all, but up until I started with keto, I was having some serious issues with it. Ulcerative colitis means that you have ulcers inside of your colon, and they can flare up at any time. They bleed, and I had to have a blood transfusion
Wow.
because of the bleeding. And it was at that moment when I really was like, I was kind of at my wits end. I was on two different medications, but I really wanted to find something that I could do outside of the medication, or holistically, if you will, that could really help with it. Something that I could do myself. And my gastroenterologist was like, cutting out sugar can definitely help with the inflammation of your colon. And so that alone for me, just knowing that there was something that I could do for myself, um, that was enough for me. That was kind of like the straw for me. So since then, since March of 2019, I have had zero flare-ups um,
Wow.
with my ulcerative colitis, and I'm actually off my medication that I was taking every single day.
That is
That's
what a
great.
testimony.
Yeah.
And I think,
That's great.
this time has just flown by. I can't believe that it's actually time to wrap up. But you all have been absolutely wonderful, and I can't think of a more inspirational way to end. I would say that we shouldn't wait for a health crisis, although that is a powerful motivator. Ulcerative colitis is, again, something that comes from chronic inflammation in our bodies, and therefore using nutrition as a way to address that chronic inflammation makes all the sense in the world. We heard a number of great points, I think. Shopping the perimeter, that death is in the aisles and life is on the perimeter of the supermarket. We heard you only need a 10 by 10 space in your house to get started. You don't really need the major exercise equipment. And if you can do it in your house as we go into the fall and the winter months when it's getting colder, we know that's something that we can achieve in our house. We heard from Amber, remove the food obstacles from inside your pantry and inside your refrigerator, because they're just going to act as temptation. And we heard about the 8 health actions in James's book, which parallel my 5 self-health actions, which of course everyone should remember. And I hope that we can go ahead and actually get from James and Sherman, I'll put it on my Facebook page, ways that you can get their books as well. So I want to thank my guests one more time for your participation and all your words of wisdom for this show. I will be back here next week on Excuse Me Doctor, 9 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube Live. And I will be on the Russ Parr Show tomorrow morning at 7:45. So if you're awake, please listen in. Thanks so much for joining us. And until I see everyone next time, be wise, be well, and be health empowered.